So the question is, how do I structure my search strategy for the general literature review? And how detailed must my search strategy be? So Matthew, what do we do to sort of develop a search strategy, and how do we effectively use it to find literature for our literature review chapter?
Yeah, so a few ideas here. The first thing we need to do is really craft a strategy. So take the time to do the planning phase up front before you ever open your internet browser. And what I want you to do is really two things up front. First, I want you to identify which databases are going to be most aligned to your work. So there are certainly general databases that your university subscribes to and has access to, but there are also many content specific databases that might be more useful to you. For example, I said my degrees are in education, so I do a lot of work in the ERIC database. I have a lot of clients who are in the medical area, so they might be using PubMed as their sort of first database. So process through and think about, is there a good content specific database to get me started? And then the second thing I want you to do is create a list of keywords that are aligned to your topic. Remember that these databases are not as fluent and user friendly as your like Google search or Bing or whatever search engine you use. They really are word specific. And a lot of times we are going to use old fashioned keywords. So we might not be using the word we would use today to describe a phenomena, but we might be looking at an older version. So another example, I do a lot of work with students who are learning the English language while they're in school. Today, we would call those multilingual learners. That's sort of the vogue term to talk about in both the literature and in practice in education. However, if I'm going to do a study and I'm researching, I'm looking back and I'm going to use older terms like English language learner or ELL, which is a term we really haven't used in about 10 years in the practice side of things. But I need to use that older keyword to find it in the literature. So we're going to identify databases, we're going to identify keywords before we even start the process.
I think that's really helpful. And if you're struggling to figure out what are the keywords that I want to be using, take a look at papers that you found that are related to the topic and see what keywords they're using under the keywords section. That's going to be really helpful. You can also use some of your key concepts, your key constructs. And in relation to the finding a database as well, if you're struggling with that, then definitely reach out to your university librarian. That's their job. They're going to know what databases are out there and what they are useful for. So definitely reach out to them as well. That's going to give you the maximum chance to find the databases that are most relevant to you. And the last thing that I might mention is don't forget to use some Boolean operators when you're developing your search terms as well. So make use of those and, ors, nots. Each database has a different structure to how they're used, but you can look at the advanced search function to get an idea of what are the options there and why we want to use those is it just helps us to get a bit more specific or a bit more broad. So for example, if you're using two concepts, English language learner and multilingual language learner, you might use an and then it will only search for papers that use both of those words. If you use an or, it will look for papers that use either option. So and always makes things tighter and or widens your search as well. And then it's all about putting that into practice, putting it down in a plan, and then using that plan as you go forward as well.